once again, we're here at Distill Chat, and I got a very, very special guest coming on, the legendary Bob James. You know, if you guys don't know, this guy is responsible for basically the foundation of hip hop. Everyone has sampled this man, and it's an honor. I've worked with Bob in the past, and it's going to be a great time for us talking right now. So let me get on the chat. I just need everyone to be patient, you know, as well with Bob, because his service might be a little bit interrupted, but I just want to make sure everything is official and he enjoys his time on Distrolord Chat. And everyone, I'd like to introduce you, the one and only, the legendary Bob James.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I hope you're able to see me and hear me.
Yes, we could. You're perfect. No problems. No problems.
This is my first live Instagram chat, so you're breaking me in.
It's an honor. Like I said, we met 7 years ago, 2013, via RZA. We did the project with you, the Rhodes Scholars, you know, and we released a lot of your back catalog, which for me was it was kind of like, how can I really say it? It was like a reintroduction to all your work again. You know, like going through all the albums and hearing all the samples, and then just like for like 7 months, just like really restudying who you are. And then I'm like, damn, I didn't know he made this beat. I didn't know they sampled this drum track, and it was really major for me to like even like set up interviews for you as well for like Vice and all that. So it was a good time that we linked around that time, you know.
And I remember how it brought back so many memories for me and kind of helped me get accustomed to this idea of how my music was being used in such a different way.
What was so listen, at 4 years old, right? You have Sister Mary Elizabeth, right?
Long time ago. Long time ago.
Had perfect pitch. Can you explain what perfect pitch is?
Well, I can explain to you that I used to have it. And age has taken its toll, so it's a very strange phenomenon, which I still don't understand. But when I was really, really young, my piano teacher was able to determine that I could be away from the piano, and she would play a note on the piano, and I had learned the names of the notes, and I knew what it was, even without looking at it. And she'd play a C, and I could be all the way across on the other side of the room, and I would say C. And then from that, I reached the point where I could hear chords, clusters of notes, and I heard the notes in my head, and I knew what the names of them were. And I didn't even really understand what that was at the time, but throughout my career as an arranger in the business, it became very, very useful to be able to have the names of the notes or the names of the chords or what key I was in. All those things were in my head. But a lot of different people have tried to understand what kind of a phenomenon that is mentally, because it wasn't something that I learned or practiced or anything like that. It was just there. And in recent years, I've discovered that my hearing shifted, and now my brain is telling me that it's a C when actually it's a B flat. So my whole perception of those note names and the keys and everything is off by a whole tone. So in some ways, it's even worse than not having it at all, because my brain is still telling me what some of those notes are. And if I went over to the piano and played based upon that, I'd be playing nothing but wrong notes.
When did you find out it was going away or
going off? Just when actually I was playing a jam session down in Florida, and there was really a great jam session. There were several other great pianists on the stage at the same time. On the other side of the stage was Joe Sample, great jazz piano player, and this jazz organist named Ricky Peterson. And they were playing, and I was off stage. I was just watching them, but they were playing this blues, and I kind of got excited and wanted to join them. And I just automatically assumed that they were in this key, and I went up, started playing the piano, and realized, whoops, no, they weren't in that key at all, and it was off. And at first I thought it was just a fluke, but little by little I kind of realized that it was some kind of function with my ears, and that was probably 10 years ago. So it's been very gradual that it's happened to me, and my overall hearing just is gradually getting higher. So fortunately I still hear it, and once I'm sitting at the piano playing those notes, my brain adjusts, and I'm okay as long as I'm there at the piano. Oh, we're in B flat now, so I can just go ahead and play, and I'm comfortable. But if I was away from the piano and joined in on some music that I wasn't familiar with, chances are I'd be one tone too high.
So everyone to know, we have the legendary Bob James in the building. For everyone that's just finished in right now, a group of people just came in so they can know who you are, what's going on. So at 7, right, you study at the Missouri Valley College, right? And basically, they kind of like made you you're basically a prodigy at this point, because you just went right into it. You just went to college, and at 7, you getting tough. How was that? How was it like being so young? I mean, my son is 7, so I don't, it's crazy for him, for me to see certain things, but for him to come to me and be like, learn how to play piano and all that, that must have been crazy for your parents.
Well, yeah, actually, I was taking piano lessons at that college, but I wasn't actually in college. I was still in elementary school at that time. And some people in my town thought of me as a prodigy because it was a really small town. There were only 8,000 people there, and I'm probably was one of only half a dozen people in the town that actually played the piano. So it was unusual for them. But if I had gone to New York at that time, at that age, I probably would not have been considered that much of a prodigy.
Man, that's crazy. So fast forward, right? The Notre Dame Collegiate Jazz Festival in 1962, right? Can you elaborate on that festival?
It was a wonderful time. It was a major kind of breakthrough that gave me confidence to go into music business, actually, because I was playing some pretty avant-garde music at that time with a couple of buddies of mine in the University of Michigan. I was playing as a trio, which throughout my whole life, that's been my favorite instrumentation, just piano, bass, and drums, jazz trio. And we decided to go compete in this festival, mostly not with the idea that we thought that we would win or even cared very much about that, but we knew that the music we were playing was going to be very different from what anybody else was doing, because we were a lot of experimentation with electronic music and with very free improvisation, really outside kind of stuff. And we thought it would just be fun to throw a little monkey wrench into the festivities down there at this festival. So we get down there and we find out that 2 of the judges were Quincy Jones and Henry Mancini, the famous movie composer, Pink Panther and all that stuff. So pretty heavy duty judge panel. And I think they were intrigued by the fact that our music was so different from anything else that was going on there, that we got their attention, ended up winning the best group at the festival. And Quincy signed me to make a record for him. He had just started as a producer at that time for Mercury Records. And as a result of that experience, I got to make my first album. That was 1962, called Bold Conceptions. And it really gave me the confidence to move to New York and give it a try in the business.
How was it to be in the studio with Quincy Jones, man? Like he produced everyone. So to say that he basically found you guys in a festival and then brought you out to the studio, how was that transition?
It was exciting, but you have to remember he hadn't even probably met Michael Jackson at that time, or a lot of the people that he ended up becoming really famous. So he was just starting out as a producer, and I had heard of him. I knew who he was. He had been a trumpet player, musician before that, and done some arranging in the jazz field, but he hadn't become anything like the iconic, amazing producer that eventually he did.
Yeah, because I heard Quincy Jones went overseas and he got instructed by all these like orchestra people and conductors. And when he came back, he was like on fire after that, you know?
Yes. And I saw him really more or less toward the beginning of that. He's a bit older than me, but not that much. And it's been actually quite fun to participate in some of the stuff that happened with Quincy, and I'm very proud to say that we have remained really good friends.
Oh man. Listen, just for everyone to kind of know a little bit about your work, all right? Hip hop samples, people that have sampled your work, right? We're gonna start with the number one, everyone knows, Nautilus. Eric B. and Rakim, Let the Rhythm Hit Him, Ghostface Killer, Daytona 500, J. Rue the Damager, My Mind Sprung, Slick Rick, Children's Story, and you know, I have a special guest. You know, this is one of the first times ever. Main Source, Live at the Barbecue ever, Nas, ever rapping on a record. And I'd like to bring my good friend, Large Professor.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bob James. Good
Hey, nice to see you.
spoke again. I mean, we spoke before, and good to speak.
We did.
Yes, absolutely. Man, it's such an honor. A few questions I had. One question I had was, you came up in the Midwest. You came up in the Midwest.
Missouri.
And then you moved to the East. Was there any kind of, like how in hip hop there was a East Coast, West Coast? Was there any kind of, I don't know, like where these guys from the East may have been treating you any kind of way because you were from the Midwest or kind of stuff? Like there was.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We had, well, I guess you call them cliques, or you were either on the inside or on the outside. If you were on the outside trying to get in, it was rough.
Right.
And there was a racial thing happening there too. So that I went through that, looking at from the outside in, and became extremely obsessed with the idea that I was going to prove that I could play the music well enough that would be what would get me in the door.
Yeah.
But there definitely was a New York attitude for sure, that once I sort of made it or was on the scene for a long enough time in New York that I was considered a New Yorker. I wasn't considered a Midwesterner anymore from this small town or something. If I had that badge, just a New York musician, it gave you cred, and you were taken seriously. But there were a lot of cliques like that. There was the East Coast versus the West Coast. That the West Coast had a completely different sound of the musicians out there, and I'm talking about in the jazz field, the sort of cool jazz that was coming from the West Coast, or the more hard driving jazz that was coming from the East Coast.
Yeah, you went to Berkeley though, right? Did you?
Very briefly, just for a short time.
Right.
And I can brag right now, my granddaughter's going to be going there in the fall. She's starting out as a freshman at Berkeley. Yeah.
A lot of
Ava.
Man, congratulations, man. That's yo, a lot of your music is like I go for vibes or I'm sample based all the way, but for some reason, I don't know, like I just get the vibes of the artist. Like, and I get a really upstate New York vibe from your music, like, and just the Tappan Z label, just all like, and do you still reside upstate New York, or have you?
No, I moved. I'm in northern Michigan right now, Traverse City, Michigan. That's where I'm talking to you from. That's where I live. That's where I'm quarantined. That's where I'm isolated during this tough time. But it was mostly just because, I lived for most of my career in the New York area, and all those recordings were made in New York. So definitely it was a New York vibe where when it was time to make a record, I had this amazing roster of musicians that I could call upon who were all the New York cats. And and they all wanted to play. So it was almost like too much. You know,
Yeah. No,
the musicians were so good. I was afraid my music couldn't live up to it.
man. Yo, you actually coined like the New York, like the vibe, like, I mean, with Nautilus, with these things. And when we spoke before, you explained to me how Nautilus was like the last song on the album. So no one expected anything of it. It was like, and you know, you expected people to listen to the album in succession of how it was recorded. So it was like Nautilus was the last song on the album. So you guys were like, all right, we'll get this one done. And, you know, that's that. And so now with this big phenomenon like the pop, I mean, but you kind of are big in the New York vibe, like just like your music is the New York vibe, man. And there's one picture that I always love, the album cover, the Hot Dog album cover. I think it may be you and your family in the back, and you're like,
Yes,
yo,
that's my daughter.
Man, I love that picture.
Yeah, I had an engineer, the great recording engineer named Joe Jorgensen, who was working with me at that time, and he was the guy selling the hot dogs. We set up that photo shoot so that we were out on the street in New York, and my engineer was selling the hot dogs, and my daughter Hillary was there with me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was a fun time, and just the fact that vinyl has made a resurgence, has come back. But my big memories were when vinyl was it. That was the way you released your record. There wasn't anything else. There was no CDs, cassettes, none of that stuff. It was vinyl, and that's why we talked about the last cut, you know, and side A and side B. Nobody thinks about that anymore. The idea of side B, there are many things that we thought about. We could in some ways be more adventurous with the things that were on side B, because maybe they're not going to get as much airplay, maybe they're not going to be as commercial, but you could try stuff. And but because a lot of the disc jockeys, the radio station would only play that one cut. They play whatever you put on cut one, side A, that would get the airplay, and they probably wouldn't even listen to the rest of the album. And that's really where, in my memory, Nautilus was just not even being paid much attention to at all. Creed Taylor, my producer, liked it, I think primarily because there was a sound in the intro that he thought it sounded like a submarine. And it was Creed Taylor that came up with the idea of calling it Nautilus because of that sound in the intro, the sound effect that we used. And so we just stuck it on there, and we put it the last cut on side B. So not only was it the last cut, it wasn't even on side A at all. And I never really thought much of anything about it. But one basic thing that I knew at that time was bass and drums. And if you got the groove, doesn't make any difference what the style is or anything. If it's grooving, if it's classical music, if it's rap, if it's polkas, whatever, if it's grooving, you're happy. And if it's not grooving, you're not happy. And I was really lucky. I had Idris Muhammad, just
Gary King,
unbelievably, everything he played just had this magic groove about it. And Gary King, the bass, those two guys were just laying it down so heavy for me. All I had to do was tinkle a little bit on the piano, and we were home.
Yo, now there's another song. I heard this, and this is a song I love. You have a song named Love Power.
Grover Washington played on it. Yeah.
Now, there's another person you had on that when I was listening to it, I listened to songs from beginning to end. I love it. But there was another song, another person you had on the song. I'm going to play a bit. Right, here we go. That's Patty Austin. That sounds like Patty Austin right there. Now listen. That's Luther Vandross.
Yeah. Yes.
Yo, when I heard that, I was like, yo, Luther, early Luther.
I could tell you a little story about Luther. He, back in 1976, I made my record for CTI called 3, my third album for CTI. And on that record, there's a tune called Westchester Lady, which became very, very popular for me and very successful. And it was instrumental. But on the recording date for that song, I had this idea about a vocal. And I asked Creed Taylor if I could do a vocal overdub session, because I had this little riff in my head. What you gonna do, Westchester Lady? Or something like that, some vocal thing. And so we brought in Luther and Patty Austin and a couple of other singers.
Crew, right? That's the crew. Right?
Yeah, and we did it with Luther, but Creed Taylor didn't like it. He thought it sounded much better as an instrumental, and he talked me out of using it.
Yo,
I'm kind of glad that he did, because it became more like instrumental, my signature piece. But many, many years later, I was doing a session with Luther after because at that time, Luther was just a background singer. He hadn't had his big hits yet at that time. And many years later, I'm trying to remember the name of the tune that I was recording with him. But anyway, he remembered that session, and he just kept saying to me, Bob, if you'd used my vocal on there, you'd have had a much bigger hit.
man, yo, no, for real though, serious, man. Wow, God bless, man. Yo, incredible.
He was a great guy and so magical. He had a kind of troubled life, and he was kind of struggling a lot with his personal life, but just it was so magical when he sang.
Man. Well, man, yo, that's all I wanted to ask, man. I have so much more, and we will speak again. Good speaking to you again, Mr. Bob James. Here's Distrolord again. Yo,
great talking with you.
Boom, 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 boom. That's the Westchester Lady joint. Please know, all right, no doubt. Just so Lord, play speak. What's up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I just want to continue on as well. Like I said, everyone, we got the legendary Bob James in the building. The foundation of hip hop is basically everything that he made. I'm gonna keep going now. Tribe Called Quest, Clap Your Hands. Warren G, Regulator. Okay. All right.
Hey, I wanted to mention. Can I mention? You mentioned earlier Slick Rick.
Yeah.
He came into New York Blue Note. I was playing there about a year or so ago, down on 3rd Street in the Village, New York, and Slick Rick came up to my dressing room because he wanted to give me a copy of this record, one of his big hits that I'm sampled on it. I'm trying to think of the name, Children's Story or Children. Anyway, he had his chains, all these chains around his neck, you know. So I asked him if I could wear his chains, and he would take them off so we could take a photo op with him with the chains. And so he said, okay. I think he had a bodyguard with him at the time to protect him. So I was a little nervous about that. But he took the chains off, and I put them on, and those chains were so heavy. I thought I was going to drop right to the ground. I almost couldn't even stand up.
You have a picture of you with all the chains on?
I have, yeah.
Yo, please send me that picture, man. Please.
Yeah, I got to find it. It was funny.
Let me keep going. Onyx, Last Days. NWA, Straight Outta Compton. Okay? Man, I continue going on and on, all right? How do you feel about the loss of CD 101?
Well, if I had been living in New York still, of course I would be missing it terribly. I've been gone from New York for so long, that's a distant memory for me, those CD 101.9 days. You sort of, as part of your life. But I'm sad about so many of the radio stations and the formats that have changed. And one of the things that I can still remember that I could see the beginning of the end coming was that some big business started to take over the programming of radio stations. And so the disc jockeys were losing control over making the choices about what they played. And in the earlier era, you had these people that you could really relate to because you knew they loved the music, and they were choosing the songs that they would play based upon their taste and what they really loved. And gradually, business started taking over a lot of those stations, and the power of choice was taken away. And there were these organizations that their job was to try to guess what the audience would like the most. And you had to have a certain amount of saxophone tunes, and you had to have a certain amount of vocals, but it was all theory. It was not passion. It was not the program directors at the station who loved the music making those choices anymore. And seeing that happen to radio was sad for me. And I could feel it when I listened to the music, that it's chosen by formula rather than by the real love of the music.
Yeah. All right, so we still have WBGO, you know what I'm saying? And
yes, of course. And there's a lot of control there. Of course, they don't play enough of my music, but that's a whole other story.
where can we go now to hear great jazz? If it's online or if it's a radio show, or maybe even you have your own platform, do you know where we can hear some great jazz for everyone right now? Because we're really missing it at this point, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. Darn, I wish I had my little station of my own that I could say, listen to WBGO or whatever. But
You know, that'd be
yeah,
something. You released
um,
2 years ago.
well, it's actually in some other ways though, it's easier to find good music if you make the choice yourself to what you search for. Because whether you go to YouTube or whether it's Spotify or wherever it is, if you, the listener or the fan, keep control over what you really want and not just let it be streamed to you randomly, almost anything is available out there now, the internet. And very often, if I'm looking for something really obscure or something that I haven't heard for a long time, but I really want to hear, all I got to do is type it in and go online, and I can find it. So that part is really powerful these days.
Yeah, there's some other tools you can use now as well. You know, and I'm gonna buy you. You know, I think it'd be really good to have your own station, man. Especially now. You know, you released your album 2 years ago, Espresso. What drum machines you used in that album?
Well, not very much. There are two songs that one of which called Submarine on that record that was a lot of fun for me because it was kind of based on Nautilus. And I was thinking about the fact that so many people have sampled me. I thought, well, why don't I just sample myself? And I don't have to look anywhere else to get the rights for it, to license it, because I own it. And so I took some chunks from the original recording of Nautilus and patched them into this new composition that my producer had been working on. And that whole track, Submarine, of course, titled with the idea of the reference to Nautilus. So it was not so much a drum machine sample on Submarine as it was just a sample of my original Nautilus. So you can hear Idris Muhammad in there too, Gary King, because I sample myself. When I use a drum machine, I usually work from, I use a software program called Stylus. It's a Spectrasonics program, and there are a lot of loops in there that I start from the basic loop and then I edit them or manipulate them. And occasionally I'll kind of create my own loop by just playing it in with pad or something and then quantizing it. But I'm trying to learn a program called Ableton, and I got their pad called Push that you play it like drum pads, so it's sort of like playing a drum machine. But the more I play around with that stuff, the more I realize that I'm more of a piano player than I am a drummer. I'm much better off to leave some of that stuff to the guys that could really kill it. And occasionally I'll find a loop or a drum machine pattern that's grooving hard enough for me to feel good about it. But usually what I will do with that is start from that loop or that machine pattern as a demo. And then I'll play it for my drummer. This is kind of like what I'm looking for. I'm getting close, but I really, 99% of the time, I'd rather have the real drummer play it on the final. And on my record, Espresso, most of the tunes on that record are Billy Kilson playing drums live.
Okay. Can you tell us a session story with Idris Muhammad? He's one of my favorite, producers, instrumentalists. Like, he is, to me, man. I've sampled him so many times, so I just want to know an ill story from him. That you guys collaborated on.
Well, I was lucky that he hired me to be the arranger to put his solo record that he made for Creed Taylor's label, called Power of Soul, I think it was, that I did for him. And just the fact that Idris wanted me to work with him was a major badge of acceptance, that realizing that he thought I could hook him up and he liked what I did. So we were very, very good friends. He was a sweet man, very gentle. And one of the things that I liked about Idris, and most of the drummers that I related to, even though they had leanings toward the rock field or eventually the hip hop field, they had jazz roots. And Idris played in a lot of straight ahead jazz group, swing, and he had these roots in the New Orleans area. So I always felt like it didn't make any difference what tune that I would bring in for him to play on. It would end up being some kind of New Orleans street beat kind of feel, but he started playing it. It's just the way he played. You felt like you were marching down the street and dancing, and I didn't have to tell him what to do. He just did it, and it was magic.
Man. Where can we get your music right now outside of the music platforms? Do you have anything direct, like your website or anyone you're working with that handles a lot of your stuff?
Well, I have bobjames.com. It's my website, and most of the stuff that I do through there. I use Facebook quite a bit, and I have done some live things from my home here during this time when a lot of us are doing that because we can't play any concerts. Everything's been canceled in that world. But frankly, I have such a high expectation of quality audio that I haven't been able to get my live home videos to sound good enough for the audio, because I started out just doing with my iPhone the way I'm talking to you right now, and the iPhone's pretty cool. The video is good and audio is okay, but it's nothing like the quality that I would get in a studio. But I just happen to have a home studio where I record a lot of my piano music with very great microphones, great audio interface, and I'm desperately trying to, without spending thousands and thousands of dollars, because that doesn't work either, because these live videos are freebies. That's it's not like you have to buy a ticket to come to them. But I'm still working on trying to find the right technology so that I can use my studio audio interface for the music part of it, for the piano sound. And if I can get that going, I'm going to do some more live things from Facebook, maybe one here from Instagram, and so that I can keep active and keep busy during this coronavirus time.
I'm gonna send Sonny some information about that. Which on Sunday I'm doing a beat battle, which is online. It's all, and it's one of the best technologies. I've been working with this company since 2012.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send it over to Sonny, and you guys can figure it all out. And it's all good. It's an amazing company. You know, it's coming from a backed music foundation, so it's great. So I'm definitely gonna link you in with that. Last question.
Love that. Yeah, I'd love to learn about it. I did one live show where I had a young kid helping me out, and he was using a Roland video switcher, and he was able to get the audio coming into through my laptop, and my desktop system. But the way my studio is laid out, I can't do the video from there. The video would just be wrong. So I need more portability. But if I could get any kind of stuff, I have a little GoPro camera, any kind of a camera, so I get decent video from my piano and have it sound the way I know it can sound. That's the main thing for me. I got to have that, the stereo with reverb and all of my sound. I got a great grand piano and beautiful microphones, but I have to be able to interface it. So if you got something that can hook me up, I'd love to know about it.
Well, bro, you always, like I said, always showed me love from 7 years ago. All you was saying, like, get me out there, let people know who I am, and everyone just loves you, bro. So last question, I'm gonna let you go after this. What was the first time you ever heard your music sampled by a hip-hop artist?
It was Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. And they actually sampled Westchester Lady, but I didn't even know the word sample at that time. I didn't even know what they were talking about, because when a friend of mine told me that I should listen to it, when I listened, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because they just actually took my tune and rapped over it. So it wasn't like a little chunk that they looped or something like that, or something that would come in and out. It was my song, Westchester Lady. You could hear the melody, you could hear everything. It was my track, and they were just rapping over the top of it. And I thought, what the heck is that? If I went to the record store and got a Frank Sinatra album or something like that and just played the piano over it, I'd end up in jail. So I had to confront them about it, because by the time I found out about it, the record was already out. The record was called He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper. I think it was the first record to win a first rap record to win a Grammy, as I recall. But we ended up with a settlement. But it was my introduction to having my music used in a way that I had no control over, and I just had to find out about it after the fact. And you probably can imagine I wasn't particularly happy about it when I first heard that, but it was an introduction to what became like a whole new world. And as the years went by after that, I found out that it wasn't just a fluke. It wasn't just a one-time thing that they took my tune. What was emerging was a new genre of music, and I think some of my recordings were just at the right place at the right time, and they ended up as a kind of basic library that was in many ways like a signature thing, having nothing to do with anything I did deliberately, I just watched it unfold, and eventually, after I got over the shock, eventually I started smiling every time I'd hear what Nautilus or something being used in another track. Kind of like getting a new lease on life and getting a little piece of the fountain of youth to come back.
And then one more thing is that a lot of people don't know, Wyldstyle, your music was in the beginning of Wyldstyle as well. Which
Yes.
Major, which I mean, and like I tell everyone, man, you are the bed of hip hop foundation sounds and sampling. So Wyldstyle was everything to us, you know. So for you to have your music in there, like that was, like I said, man, you laid the pavement for all of us, you know. Especially that's hip hop in its purest form in the beginning, and to have your music inside that movie was everything, you know.
Give some thought to. There's one thing that's always in my mind, and I don't know whether it will ever even happen or not, but the foundation of my music is live performance, playing it as a performer, and that's the most exciting, the most stimulating thing in music for me. And I've only had one opportunity during this whole phenomenon with the hip hop field of actually playing with another hip hop artist. And the guy that I collaborated with a little bit was Rob Swift. And he became a friend during that time, and I had lots of respect for him as a performer. So many of the artists in the hip hop field probably are studio based, and a lot of the things get created in the studio, but the actual live performance is a whole different thing, because you're out there on the stage, and now you got to just do it. And there's no manipulating. Well, actually, there is manipulating with these the technology that they use. But I kept trying to figure out, since my music has been so much a part of this field, would I be able to perform with any of the hip hop artists that sampled my music and took it to this completely different place? And what would that be like to be on the stage with them at the same time? And that hasn't happened.
Man, we need to. And there's so much great things, you know. I'm happy Sonny reconnected us. You know, you know who Robert Glasper is?
Yeah.
All right, he's amazing. I just started to work with him almost 2 years ago. Brought him on board to work on the Wu-Tang Clan album with Ghostface. And, and you know, Ghost samples all your music all the time. Yeah. But I performed at Blue Note with Yasin Bey, who's known as Mos Def. And they rocked that, bro. They rocked. You guys link, it will just be magical, man. I think it will just be a new resurgence of seeing live artists perform, man. And I think you're one of those guys that can really bring it to that level, you know?
I'd love to try to do that.
Goes down.
Look it up with Sonny. Talk to Sonny about it.
I got you. Definitely. Everyone, like I said, we have the legendary Bob James, jazz legend, hip hop foundational for everything. Bob James, what is your website?
BobJames.com. Pretty simple.
Everyone who's on the live, to follow him. You know, once we get off, show him love, support his music, man. Like, you have any merch on your website, on BobJames.com?
We do, but it's not a heavy retail kind of thing that I try to do. But there is some there, yeah. All right. I appreciate you punching that up.
Yeah, because we definitely need some shirts. You know, we definitely need some hats, some Bob James hats. Even if
Sonny, he's got them down there in his garage in Florida.
Let's do it.
He'll hook you up.
Everyone to follow Bob James on his page. Stay in tune with him. I'm gonna be helping him out maybe down in the future to get those live and all this technology stuff going. Because we need to hear more amazing music from you, man. And especially, are you working on anything new as well? Are you working on any new projects on the side, or right now?
Yeah, I have several new projects, and the one that I'm sort of early on with, but I've had some pretty good luck hooking up with some young musicians, new ones, and Sonny helped me with some of them. But I'm trying to put together a band called the Young Guns, and a drummer from Florida
Okay.
James Atkins that I met through Sonny, and guitar player also Will Patrick, and a saxophone player from the Ukraine, Andrei Schmut, who's just awesome guy. All these guys are in their early 20s, and we're trying to put some kind of a project together with that. I have a collaboration with a great jazz trumpet player in Europe named Till Brunner. We were about 2/3 of the way through that album project when this coronavirus problem has kind of ground us to the halt. So I'm having trouble figuring out the scheduling to complete it. But I got more stuff coming soon, I hope.
Yeah, very. Thank you again, man, for your time. Everyone, like I said, legendary jazz musician, you know, really the godfather of hip hop, of people sampling. Bob James, ladies and gentlemen, please follow them, support him, respect him for everything, man. Like I said, we appreciate you. I had to bring Large Professor in because he's like one of the first people to sample your music to where it got to another bar, man. So thank you again, man, for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll speak very soon, all right?
Okay, thank you for having me on your live.
Yes, sir.